The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. As Jesus continued his journey to Jerusalem, he traveled through Samaria and Galilee. As he was entering a village, 10 lepers met him. They stood at a distance from him and raised their voices, saying, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." And when he saw them, he said, "Go show yourselves to the priests." As they were going, they were cleansed. And one of them, realizing he had been healed, returned, glorifying God in a loud voice. And he fell at the feet of Jesus and thanked him. He was a Samaritan. Jesus said in reply, 10 were cleansed, were they not? Where are the other 9? As none but this foreigner returned to give thanks to God. Then he said to him, "Stand up and go. Your faith has saved you." The Gospel of the Lord. Meister Eckhart, he was a 14th century German theologian. He was a Dominican order of preachers. He was a priest. Meister Eckhart. Eckhart was his first name. Van Hockeyn was his last name. Meister is a term of honor. We might in English call him Master or Mr. Meister Eckhart. One of his famous quotations is this one: "If the only prayer you said was thank you, that would be enough." It would be enough, telling God thank you. Now, Meister Eckhart recognizes that people have prayers that they say. It was true at that time as well. But he's saying that if all you say is thank you, that's your best prayer, because it recognizes your relationship to God. Thank you. Thank. It comes from a very early English word, think. People in those days would say, "Thank you." They would think of you. And that through time evolved into thank you. Thinking of you. Giving thanks is in the Gospel today. So we heard Jesus is journeying to Jerusalem. Translation says that he traveled through Samaria and Galilee. In the Greek, though, it says that he was in the midst of Galilee and Samaria, which means he's traveling south. He's going from Galilee down to Samaria, down to Judea, where Jerusalem is. And so the Greek says he's in the midst of Galilee and Samaria, so he's right there at the border. Right there. And so the lepers coming out are mostly Galilean. They're just like Jesus. They're Galileans. And so they're coming out to Jesus for being cured of their leprosy. But as Jesus recognizes, one of them is not a Galilean. He's Samaritan. He's come over across the border from Samaria. He's not welcome there. He's shunned even by the other lepers. They would have nothing to do with him. The Jewish people had nothing to do with Samaritans, and that was a very firm rule. But nonetheless, he's in the group. So he comes with these 9 Galileans and this Samaritan. They approach Jesus and ask him to heal them, which he does. He sends them off to show yourselves to the priests, and on the way to going to the priest in order for the priest to declare them clean, they're cleansed. Their leprosy leaves them. But the other 9, which are probably Galileans, go home. They're able to go home now. They've been living in the wilderness. They've been not allowed into town because of their leprosy. No one have anything to do with them. But now they're cleansed. The priest says you're clean. And so home they go to their Galilean homes. The Samaritan, though, is in a foreign land. He can't just go home. He's got to cross over back into Samaria. But he comes to Jesus to tell him, thank you. The other 9, the 9 Galileans, don't. They just go home. So there's two reasons for the Samaritan to come to thank Jesus. He thanks him in a big way. The Greek says he lays down with his face on the ground. We call it prostrating, but this is much more dramatic. He actually, in the Greek, puts his face on the ground and thanks God and thanks Jesus for his healing. The reason that is so powerful for him compared to the other 9, if they are indeed Galileans, is that Jesus has crossed a wall into this man's life. He has transferred his relationship to this man, even though the culture puts a wall up in between them. And so Jesus reaches out to him, and so he not only cures him of his leprosy, but brings him into the group in a very important way. And so the Samaritan thanks him, and the word for thanking, Euchariston, which we use in the word Eucharist, thanksgiving. We thank God, we think of God. We thank him, we recognize him. We allow the Lord to lower the bridge, that the Lord could just relegate us to nothingness, to just not have a relationship to us. But the Lord doesn't. The Lord has a relationship to us, just as Jesus did with this Samaritan. The Lord brings down the wall and makes us his children through the waters of baptism. And so it's a time for us in this gospel to reflect upon this relationship we have with the Lord, who has lowered the walls, has made God accessible to us, especially in the Eucharist, Eucharistia, thinking of God, thanking God, receiving the body and blood of the Lord in the most intimate way. It's the closest we get to God this side of death. And it's a gift that the Lord gives us in order to lower the wall, just as Jesus did with the Samaritan. We're also called to lower walls in our lives. Who do we have walls in between us? Who do we ignore? Who do we forget about? Maybe even shun them. Maybe even dislike them. Maybe we don't agree with them. Maybe we even hate them. Who is that in our lives? It could be a family member. It could be a neighbor. It could be someone we used to work with. It could be somebody who used to be a friend. It could be somebody on TV. You watch TV and get all riled up and hate that person because you don't agree with them. But we're called to be like Jesus, to lower the wall, and allow this person to have a relationship with us, if not in our imagination, as in the TV case, but in reality with the people in our lives. Lower the wall and let them be in a position in which they think of us because we took the initiation to reach out to them, just as Jesus did with the Samaritan, even though the culture would tell him not to do that. Don't deal with this man. But Jesus did it anyway. And we're called to lower the wall and reach out to the Samaritans in our lives who need us to reach out to them. And in the process, we give them the opportunity to thank God for the fact that we reached out to them with forgiveness and kindness and humility, graciousness and mercy. And they then can be thankful to God for that gift that we have given them. And so we're called to thank God too. Thank God every day. We can say our prayers. We have prayers that we say routinely when you wake up or go to bed or during the day. But from time to time, replace those prayers with nothing but the words, thank you. Thank you for that. Meister Eckhart said, that's as good as any prayer that you can say. Just those two words, because it recognizes the gift the Lord has given us, and also the Lord has lowered the wall and brought us into his family. And for that, we think of him.